London, May 1942. You hear them before you see them. 10,000 boot heels hitting cobblestone in perfect unison. Not the exhausted shuffle of British Tommies dragging themselves back from another patrol. Not the nervous quick-step of Home Guard volunteers. This is something different. Mechanical, confident, loud. The sound echoes off the broken buildings lining the parade route buildings with their guts blown out by German bombs. Windows like missing teeth, but still standing, still defiant. The way London has been standing for 2 years now, bleeding but upright. And there, on the reviewing platform, Winston Churchill watches, the man who stared down the Luftwaffe, who growled defiance through cigar smoke while bombs fell on his head, who turned never surrender into a national religion. His hand moves to his face. His shoulders begin to shake. The handkerchief comes out white linen against his black coat, and he doesn't even try to hide it. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the hardest man in the British Empire, is crying in public. The Americans march past. Young faces, corn-fed shoulders, rifles so new they practically gleam. They don't march like they're going to war. They march like they've already won. Churchill presses the handkerchief to his eyes and murmurs to the aide beside him. When I see these young men, I know we are going to win this war. Why? Why now? Why not during the Blitz, when London burned for 57 consecutive nights? Why not after Dunkirk, when Britain scraped together a miracle and called it a retreat? Why not during those endless cabinet meetings in underground bunkers, deciding which cities could be defended and which had to be sacrificed? Why does Winston Churchill break on a grey May afternoon watching a routine military parade? Because this is the moment he stops drowning. Let's go back. 2 years earlier, May 1940. Picture Europe as a row of dominoes and watch them fall. Denmark, 1 day. Norway, 2 months. But it doesn't matter, it falls. Belgium, 18 days. The Netherlands, 5 days. France, with its Maginot Line and its Grand Army and its absolute certainty that 1918 taught Germany a lesson 6 weeks. 6 weeks from invasion to surrender. Britain wakes up and realizes it's alone. Not strategically alone. Existentially alone. The nearest friendly major power is Canada. 3,000 miles across an ocean crawling with German U-boats. The rest? Neutral, conquered, or actively trying to kill you. Churchill takes over as Prime Minister on the 10th of May, 1940, the same day Germany invades France. He inherits a country that's about to watch its entire army get trapped on a beach in Dunkirk, a country whose fighter pilots are so outnumbered that survival isn't strategy, it's prayer. He moves into war rooms 300 feet underground, concrete walls that weep condensation, the smell of damp wool uniforms and stale tobacco, maps covered in red grease, pencil each mark another place the Germans are. And he writes letters, lots of letters, to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, the only man on earth who controls enough steel, enough oil, enough everything to make a difference. 1,700 letters over the course of the war. That's not correspondence. That's obsession. And these aren't letters between equals. Churchill is begging, politely, eloquently, but begging nonetheless. He signs them, former naval person, a little inside joke, because Roosevelt once ran the Navy Department and Churchill once ran the Royal Navy. 2 old sailors, right? Colleagues, friends. Surely friends help each other. Can you spare some destroyers? Any chance of some aircraft? Perhaps some ammunition? The letters are masterpieces of persuasion. Churchill wields the English language like a weapon. He's a writer, after all. A Nobel Prize winner for literature. He wraps Britain's desperation in rhetoric so beautiful you almost forget it's a ransom note. Roosevelt reads them. Roosevelt sympathizes. Roosevelt sends. Words. Encouraging words. Supportive words. Words about how America stands with Britain in spirit. Words about Lend-Lease programs and supply convoys. But not soldiers. Never soldiers. America will lend Britain the tools. But Americans aren't dying in another European war. Not after the last one. Not after the trenches and the gas and the million dead for a peace that lasted 20 years. Churchill understands. Of course he understands. He's a historian. He knows Americans bled for European quarrels before and got nothing but grief for it. But understanding doesn't stop the Germans. Through 1940, through 1941, Britain holds. Barely. The RAF wins the Battle of Britain by the skin of its teeth, and by skin, I mean, they're literally running out of pilots faster than they can train new ones. The U-boats are strangling supply lines. Rationing gets tighter. 4 ounces of bacon per person per week. 4 ounces. You can practically see through the slices. Churchill keeps writing letters. And then the 7th of December 1941, Pearl Harbor. The news crackles over the radio. Japanese bombers, American battleships capsized in their own harbor. 2,400 Americans dead before breakfast. The world reels. Roosevelt goes to Congress the next day with his Day of Infamy speech. America is in the war. And Churchill? Churchill sleeps. For the first time in 18 months, Winston Churchill sleeps soundly. He'll write about it later, almost embarrassed. I went to bed and slept the sleep of the saved and thankful. Think about that. While Americans are pulling bodies from the wreckage of the Arizona, while the Pacific Fleet burns, Churchill is finally resting easy, because he can do math. Germany is good. Germany is very, very good. Tactically brilliant, operationally ruthless. But Germany is fighting countries, France, Poland, Britain, Russia. Countries have limits. Countries break. America isn't just a country. America is a capacity. Detroit can build tanks faster than Berlin can count them. Texas pumps more oil in a month than Germany sees in a year. The American industrial base isn't a war machine. It's a geological force. Churchill knows this. Has known it since 1940. That's why he's been writing those letters. But declarations of war are paper. Paper doesn't stop panzers. He needs the Americans here. In uniform. With guns. He needs proof. January 1942. They arrive. The 34th Infantry Division, the Red Bull from Iowa, Minnesota, the Dakotas, farm boys and factory workers, kids who've never seen an ocean suddenly crossing the Atlantic in freezing convoy, dodging submarines, puking into helmets. They disembark in Belfast and Liverpool with duffel bags and wide eyes, and Britain gets its first look at American plenty. The British soldiers see it first. They're in the same cities, sometimes the same bases. They watch the Americans unload. Every GI has a steel helmet, a full uniform, boots that aren't held together with cardboard inserts, matches, cigarettes, actual tobacco cigarettes, not the sawdust and hope mixture the British have been smoking. The American mess tents start cooking. That smell. God, that smell. Real coffee, not chicory, not roasted grain. Coffee, the kind that actually keeps you awake. And beef, steaks thick as your palm, sizzling on griddles. The fat pops and hisses. The smoke drifts over to the British side of camp, where Tommy is choking down his daily potato and wondering if that sliver of Spam is worth the stomach cramps. The Americans have ice cream. In January, in Britain, during a war, they have Coca-Cola. They have Hershey bars. They have plenty. And their kids, 19, 20 years old, chewing gum and calling everyone buddy, and asking if London really has a king because that's pretty neat. They've never met a king before. The British soldiers watch this and feel something complicated twist in their chests. Gratitude, sure. Relief, absolutely. These kids crossed an ocean to help, but also resentment, hot and bitter, and impossible to admit. Because British privates are making 21 shillings a week. American privates are making $50 a month, 5 times as much. Because British soldiers have been fighting for 2 years on 4 ounces of bacon while these fresh-faced Americans show up with full stomachs and fat wallets. Because British girls notice. Nylon stockings, perfume, chocolate, things that have been extinct in Britain since 1940. Things that American GIs hand out like party favors. The joke starts in the pubs, spreads like wildfire. Every British soldier knows it within a week. What's the problem with the Yanks? They're overpaid, oversexed, and over here. It's funny. It's bitter. It's true. Churchill hears the joke. Probably hears it a dozen times. He's got informants everywhere. He knows what the troops are saying, what the civilians are muttering, and he shrugs. They're young, he says. That's what young men do. The important thing is, they're on our side. Because Churchill isn't thinking about bruised egos or cultural friction. Churchill is doing math again. Every American private represents the farm that grew his food, the factory that made his rifle, the oil refinery that fueled the ship that brought him here, the training base that taught him to shoot, the industrial ecosystem that can replace him if he falls. Britain has will. Enormous, historic, empire-forged will. America has mass. And in the kind of war Germany is fighting total war, industrial war mass wins. February 1942. Churchill decides to visit an American base, unannounced. No parade, no ceremony. He just wants to see them. He ends up at a camp full of Texas boys. Big farm kids with slow drawls and handshakes like hydraulic presses. They don't quite know how to treat him. He's the Prime Minister, sure, but he's also just this round old guy with a cigar who seems genuinely interested in their stories. They tell him about cattle ranching, about high school football, about their girlfriends back home, and whether it's true that British beer is warm. Churchill listens. He doesn't tell them that his mother was American, Jenny Jerome, from Brooklyn, that he's technically got U.S. citizenship, that he grew up hearing American accents at the dinner table. He just watches these kids 19 years old, fresh out of basic training, joking about how weird British money is, and something settles in his chest. These boys didn't have to be here. Pearl Harbor happened 5,000 miles from Texas. German bombs never fell on Dallas. Nobody invaded Iowa. But here they are, on a cold, wet island that's been under siege for 2 years, ready to board ships to Africa, to Italy, eventually to France, ready to die for people they've never met, in countries they can't find on a map. And behind each of them, invisible but real, are the farms and factories and mines and refineries and railroads of the entire continental United States. Hitler conquered Europe in 2 years. Now he's facing Detroit. Good luck. May 1942. The parade. Hyde Park, London. Springtime, if you can call it that. Grey sky, damp air, the city still picking rubble out of its teeth from last night's raid. The reviewing stand is full of British brass. Generals, admirals, Churchill in his black coat, cigar clamped between his teeth. And here they come, the 34th Infantry, the Red Bull Division, 10,000 men in crisp uniforms, rifles at shoulder arms, marching in formation so tight you could bounce a coin off it. They're not the best soldiers yet. Hell, most of them haven't seen combat. Some of them will die in North Africa in a few months. Some will make it all the way to Germany. Some will come home and never talk about it. But right now, in this moment, they look like they could march straight to Berlin and kick the door down. Churchill watches, column after column. Young faces, confident grins. That particularly American swagger. Not arrogance. Exactly. Just the certainty that problems exist to be solved. And they're pretty good at solving problems. Something breaks in Churchill's chest. Not breaks, releases. For 2 years, he's been the man holding the dam together with his bare hands. Every speech he gave was mortar. Every cigar was defiance. Every letter to Roosevelt was a brick in the wall keeping Britain from drowning. And now finally, he can see the reinforcements. Not promised. Not theoretical. Here, his vision blurs. He blinks, but that makes it worse. The tears come whether he wants them to or not. His hand fumbles for the handkerchief. White linen. He presses it to his eyes. Doesn't even try to hide it. The aide next to him looks alarmed. "Sir?" Churchill waves him off. His voice comes out rough, barely above a whisper. "When I see these young men, I know we are going to win this war. It's not a prediction. It's not hope. It's certainty." Because Churchill can see past the parade. He can see the landing craft hitting Omaha Beach in 2 years. He can see B-17 seconds turning German factories into rubble. He can see Sherman tanks rolling through the Siegfried Line. He can see VE Day and Hiroshima and the whole inevitable, unstoppable cascade of American industrial might grinding the Axis into dust. Germany thought it was fighting the British Empire's will. It was. Until this moment. Now it's fighting American capacity. And capacity doesn't lose. It just builds more tanks than you can kill, trains more pilots than you can shoot down, produces more steel than you can melt. It drowns you in tonnage. Churchill knows this. Has known it since Pearl Harbor. But knowing and seeing are different things. And now he can see. The tears keep coming. He doesn't fight them. For once, just once, Winston Churchill lets himself feel the weight lift. The parade continues. The Americans march past, bootfalls echoing off the broken buildings, and Churchill watches through blurred vision. For 2 years, he's been alone. Now he has company. The war goes on for 3 more years. D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, the firebombing of Dresden, the liberation of concentration camps, Berlin in ruins, Hitler dead in a bunker, Japan reduced to ash and surrender, rivers of blood, mountains of corpses, cities erased. But Churchill was right that afternoon in May. The outcome was decided, not by brilliance, not by heroism, by arithmetic, by the simple, brutal fact that America could replace anything Germany destroyed faster than Germany could destroy it. History remembers Churchill's speeches. "We shall fight on the beaches," their finest hour, never in the field of human conflict. Grand words for grand moments, rhetoric that rallied a nation. But maybe his most important contribution was simpler, recognizing when the war was won, having the sense to let himself break, just once, in gratitude, trusting that those 19-year-old farm boys from Iowa would do what they came to do. The parade ends. The soldiers march off to their barracks. Churchill wipes his eyes, recomposes himself, lights a fresh cigar, becomes the bulldog again. But for those few minutes, Britain's hardest man let the world see something rare: relief. The tears of a man who'd carried a nation's survival on his back and finally found someone to share the weight. Germany thought it was fighting the British Empire. It was, until that grey afternoon in May, when it suddenly found itself fighting American inevitability instead. And inevitability doesn't negotiate. It doesn't retreat. It just waits. And then it wins.